Hi, welcome to Fireside Snack. Let's grab a snack and sit down to chat. We're Abby and Gabby, two recovery coaches eager to share our lived and professional experience in the world of mental health and eating disorders. In our time together, we hope to grab a bite to eat and connect with ourselves and each other. Our hope with this podcast is to inspire you to take care of yourself by building a life you don't want to run away from. As a disclaimer, the information shared in this podcast is based on the personal experiences of Abby and Gabby and is intended for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are seeking support or have concerns about your mental health, please consult with a licensed professional. Enjoy your fireside snack.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fireside Snack, episode 4. My name's Abby, and I'm with Gabby.
Gabby! I'm Gabby. Hello.
And we're excited to be talking with you today, sharing some of our insights as people with lived experience in eating disorders and also recovery coaches ourselves. We got some big topics for today, but first it's snack check-in. So if you're new to the podcast, each week, bring a snack, bring a meal. Let's share the space together and enjoy some food. So Gabby, looks like we've got some almonds.
Almonds. They're salt and vinegar flavored. Honestly, if you put salt and vinegar seasoning on almost anything, I will probably love it and adore it. So this is what I have. And then you'll notice this about me, Abby. I am always drinking LaCroix, like some kind of seltzer adjacent water. And it's I feel bad about it because I used to be, like when I was in college, I was like, LaCroix, it's just for the hipsters and all this stuff. And now I probably have 2 to 3 cans a day, which is...
I will let you have all the LaCroix. I am not yucking anyone's yums. For me, I want a more powerful flavor and like a carbonated beverage. So I struggle with seltzer waters.
Interesting. I don't like sparkling waters. So I'm curious, have you tried Spindrift with the juice?
No, there's a brand called Bonsai that I get at the grocery store though, and it's with pineapple, mango, and blueberry stuff. It's delicious. I'll have that, but I need a punch of flavor. I don't do good with lightly flavored things.
I'm a carbonated girly. Abby, talk to us about your snack today. I feel like you've got something to share.
Yes. So I actually don't have a snack today, folks. And I felt like it was a good opportunity to talk through this and honoring your body a little bit. So I'm an intuitive eater. I'm at that part in my recovery, and my stomach is Raising Cane. Not happy with me today, so I've made sure that I had an adequate breakfast. I had a morning snack. I'll have lunch coming up in a bit, but my stomach's just really not happy, so I have some iced chamomile tea, which I like things
lovely.
Cold, so I'll be having that, some self-soothing, and paying attention to my hunger cues later to see if I'm feeling a little more hungry, if there's something that I can offer myself then. But for now, I'm just going to be enjoying some tea today.
I love that. I think it's perfectly okay to meet yourself where you're at with those kinds of things. It's also Super Bowl Sunday, so you can tell I'm repping the Chiefs. Just because I like the Chiefs does not mean that Philadelphia Eagles fans are not welcome here. I just wanted to say that. I can appreciate all. I hope both teams have a great time playing, and I'm excited for the halftime show.
I'm giving that kind of vibe. Everybody have fun.
Everyone has fun. I think one of the big things we want to start off with today is we have our first audience question, Abby. So I'm going to go ahead and read it, and we can decide how we want to respond. So what we received this week is... How did you tell people in your life that you were in recovery without putting pressure on them to do something about it?
This is such a good question, because not only in these situations that I've experienced, not only does the other person feel pressured, I also feel pressured. It can just be helpful to have a little bit of understanding beforehand. So for me, sharing only as much as I was comfortable with. So sometimes using the language eating disorder or specific diagnosis can be really daunting. I'm struggling with my relationship with food. I don't need you to watch me, but I felt like it would be important to let you know. I can keep it more general, just broad strokes, letting someone know I don't need you to like dig into this for me. Something I've done with like more specific when I'm telling someone that I want to be more involved. Yeah, I'm struggling with an eating disorder. I do have a team of a therapist or a dietitian that are supporting me, but I might be a little more raw emotionally. So if you just see me and offer me a hug, that would be great. So giving them something to do that's not like, I don't need everyone to play therapist. Got plenty of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gabby, how did this work for you?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to, so I just watched Shrinking season 2 on Apple TV, and it's one of my favorite TV shows. But in the show, the main character, him and his daughter, his wife passes away. She's in a car accident. And they talk about this in the second season about how everybody, it feels like they're like walking on eggshells around them, like because they know the daughter says, I'm the one with the dead mom. And so in the show, the dad is talking with the daughter about how everybody is viewing her and seeing her as different because this tragic thing happened to her. And he reclaims it and he tells her, whenever I'm talking to people, I always say that I have dead wife face because it breaks the ice up and it makes it feel like a little bit more lighthearted than this really heavy topic because it's a super hard and heavy thing, but making it so that you have the power in this situation and you're not handing it over to somebody else. So I think a big one for me is I will lightly talk about it. Like I will say like, yeah, I'm somebody in recovery. Similar to you, Abby, I also will kind of say, I don't need anything from you. I appreciate your insight. I'm just letting you know so that you can be informed of where I'm at as a person. But I also am somebody who will make lighthearted jokes about things because I've been in recovery for a long time and I'm on the other side of the struggle that I tend to make things a little bit more lighthearted. Yeah. Two great options.
The power of like some satire, some reality is often like you laugh or you cry, and it's okay to invite some laughter. So I like that, Gabby.
I think it's just this thing is already so heavy, and when you're in early stages of recovery, you're typically talking about this all the time. Like your identity sometimes becomes I'm somebody in recovery as opposed to I'm Gabby. And so I think being able to reclaim that and be like, I have an eating disorder and the voice of a Disney chipmunk. What's up with you? You know, like that's kind of how I show up and bring myself to the table. But I know for everybody it's different, right? I think Abby had a great point about setting some initial boundaries and telling people how you want them to show up. I also think it's okay too if you're not super comfortable with that to make it a little lighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I like our push-pull, Gabby. I like our perspectives. I'm here for it. And I think we're going to need it for our topic today. We have two broad things that we're hoping to hit on, but the first is dun 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 self-love. And I don't mean to say that in like a oh no, but it can be hard. It is. Yeah. So we each spent time brainstorming separately this week about self-love, and I'm really curious because we haven't fully explored it between our contrasting our perspectives and opinions. So I'm kind of pumped to see where this lands us this week. Gabby, I don't know if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, I think I will kick us off because I literally looked up the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition.
I love this.
So I think that would be a good place to jump off. You will probably notice that I look up the definitions for everything because I want to make sure I'm somebody who really relies on hunches. And so my partner is always getting on to me because he'll be like, do you know like what the answer to this thing is? And I'll come up with the answer that I think is correct, but is not necessarily true. And so he'll be like, is that the actual thing or is that just what you think it is? And I am constantly stuck in this cycle of always going on my best guess. So today I found the definition of self-love. As defined by Merriam-Webster, it's an appreciation of one's own worth or virtue, proper regard for and attention to one's own happiness or well-being. There were also some definitions in there that were more thinking of self-love as a negative connotation, sometimes being conceited or full of yourself, but I don't think that's really what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah. I really appreciate that you go back to definitions, because I myself was trying to understand, when I hear the word self-love, what comes to mind to me, because definitely my approach to it is going to change based on that definition. And for me, my brain goes to adoration. So it's beyond some kind of acceptance or appreciation of oneself. It's like, I love this aspect about me. I love that I do this. And so it feels grandiose. It's like an ultimate expression towards self, which rightfully can feel daunting, but bringing it back to the definition, I actually align a lot more with self-love than I would have put myself initially.
I agree. When I heard self love too, because I think self love has become a buzzword in our generation. It's kind of like, show yourself self love or make sure you're taking care of yourself. But I feel like nobody really gives you concrete ways of what that looks like. And I think it's difficult because there's no one path to it.
Yeah.
I know for me, I had to really get into a neutral space about myself before I was able to be like, I love myself. And some days that also waxes and wanes. I don't always feel on top of the world, but some days I do, and that's pretty great. But I think what really changed for me, and Abby, I know you'll probably be able to speak on this as well, is most of what I thought about myself was based on what other people had told me about myself. I didn't really have a lot of innate self abilities of know that I am capable and competent and special and all of these things. I did not feel that way about myself. And so I was always going out in the world and being defined by other people, whether that was people at school, partners, teachers, parents, family members. And I think a lot of the dialogue that was going on in my head, some of the negative self-talk and the criticism came from what I had heard from other people and their thoughts about me, because I didn't have a sturdy enough foundation on who I was as a person.
I think it brings up the internal debate of is self-worth inherent? Is this something, I said self-worth, I guess it kind of ties in with self-love, but is self-love inherent? Is it something that I automatically deserve, or is it tied to what I believe about myself? Is it tied to if I feel like I'm performing as I should? I think there's a lot of qualifications, at least in my experience, that have come as a boundary, a barrier between me and self-love.
I love that you said that too, because it truly is. I think self-love is when you stop listening to the outside world and you start listening to your internal landscape and your internal dialogue of who you actually are. So I like that you said performance, because I think for a lot of us, when you don't know who you are, you're just trying to achieve to get accolades or titles or different status in society. And when you don't achieve those things, you're nothing. And when you do achieve them, you're something until the next thing comes along.
Ooh. And this is Gabby, my initial thoughts around self-love were the stages, that it's a gradient, that self-love for me is at the far end of the gradient, but there's other stages that I think are worth talking about, which is where my brain went. And quickly I think of tolerance. So I'm not accepting my body. I don't have great feelings about my body. I may or who I am, but I can tolerate it for a little bit. Neutrality. I'm not taking a positive or negative stance towards myself. I'm being very neutral. Maybe some distancing from the idea that I have to love myself in order to be happy, or that I have to hate myself in order to do good things. And then acceptance. So a little farther from neutrality, we're grooving with things a little bit more. Appreciation starting to show, and then love. Self-love. And so this is a continuum that I constantly find myself in different stages. And I think that is okay when we talk about recovery or just life for your average person. There is flex, and that is normal and part of living where the world is messy. And there are times where I have to tolerate myself today. Maybe I feel a certain way, and there are other times where I'm I am queen of all, but most of the time I'm somewhere in the middle. And that's a gradient. That's okay. Checking in with yourself on it can be can be helpful because you're not obligated to try and love yourself, but how you treat yourself is different. You don't have to love yourself to treat yourself well. So wherever you find yourself on that continuum, you can still do what you need to do for your body, your recovery, your life, your values, your connections, all of those things.
Absolutely. And I love that you talked about the continuum, because I do think that people sometimes view self-love as something that you achieve or something that you get to, and that's not always what it looks like. It's always in flux. It's always changing day to day. I think a big thing too about self-love that was really important for me to recognize was that the way that I loved myself was the way that I was showing up and loving other people in the world. So for me, if I was talking really negative to myself and putting a lot of judgment and shame on myself, that's how I would talk to other people. I was notorious for being a road rager, or I think about my very first relationship with my partner and how our fights were so toxic and explosive and involved name calling, because that's how I talked to myself as well, and that's how he talked to himself too. So I think there's a lot of ways that our judgment towards ourselves ends up seeping out into other people and our perspective of how we view the world. If life is happening to us, then we're always angry at everybody else because they're perpetrating against us, which isn't necessarily true.
And so I guess this rages. Now I'm thinking all things anger. This raises an interesting question of what have been some bigger barriers to getting yourself on this continuum of self-love. What has that process looked like for you?
Rough, hard, difficult, something that did not come easy. I think in order for me to even move the scale at all from self-love to self-hate, because I think self-hate was where I was operating for a majority of my adolescence and my young adulthood, I think I had to realize that I was a person just like everybody else who deserved good things and deserved love and care and compassion. It would be wild for me to be out in the world and, I'm somebody who's very justice oriented. I'm very community oriented. So to be out here saying people deserve, X, Y, and Z rights and everybody deserves to be treated equally, except for me. Because I deserve something way worse for some reason. And so I think what had to happen was I had to buy into the fact that I was worthy of being loved and appreciated, or even worthy of not being hated, I think was a big one.
Ooh, that is such a worthy of not being hated. I don't know if I've ever framed it like that, but that is incredibly accurate to my experience in the past. And I brought this up, I think, in the first episode, but suffering was a really big deal for me because I felt like I deserved it. I needed it. And that was such a huge barrier to thinking that there was anything out there for me other than horrible things. And so
this is what I deserve. Yeah.
Right. And so I learned to reject a little bit the idea of being deserving. And I'm really big into if I'm having this belief that I'm not deserving of kindness or love, okay, so what does that mean? Does that mean that we need to keep doing these things? Or are those things inherently tied together? And that questioning was huge to getting me onto a different track and frame of mind, because while I do believe I am deserving of self-love now, for then going, okay, so what if I don't? So what do I do? And starting to transform that I am still here. People are still doing nice things for me. I still feel so much differently towards others than I do myself. So comparing what I'm okay with for other people, the forgiveness I can extend others, the care that I can extend others, and comparing that with myself, it helped kind of break the really firm thought process that this is just how it had to be, and that I could actually try something different.
I think if people are looking to embark on self-love while they're on their recovery journey, I think a really good place to start is to work with a therapist or somebody you trust, or if you feel comfortable doing this yourself, by all means. But looking back to the time when you first started feeling like you weren't worthy of things and kind of analyzing what was going on in your life at that time, what were the messages that you were receiving at that time. I know for me a big one was I didn't feel like I was able to make mistakes. And life is inherently about making mistakes all the time. It's constantly about beefing it and then coming back on the other side and getting back on the saddle. And so for me, that was a really hard thing to grapple with, that I can make mistakes and that doesn't make me a bad person or a failure of a person.
And I think it's worth noting, because we are both coming from the eating disorder space, that I think a big thing for myself and for many others is that my body was a barrier to what I thought I could do with self-love. Gabby, I don't know if you have like a similar experience, but for me, I thought, well, this body that I'm in, what I look like, is a big part of what I can offer to the world, is a big part of what would make me deserving.
Yeah.
And because of how I am, I don't think I deserve that. And that was something that took, I call it cultivating, because it's that, I imagine a gardener feverishly like digging the soil, changing things out, planting, pruning. I was cultivating some sort of tolerance, not even jumping straight, into the like deep end of self-love, but just cultivating some sort of tolerance from what I really struggled with. My body isn't how I think it should be. I don't think that I can experience self-love.
I love that you tied it back to the body, because I think that is a huge thing. And I think it's extremely difficult too, because there's so many messages on what a body should be being portrayed in our society. And this is your body. This is the body that you received, right? And just because it doesn't look like X, Y, and Z does not mean it's anything less than perfect. And I think that's what's very difficult for us to wrap our heads around. Yeah, I'm like 5 feet tall. And so I always thought that if there was just a Laffy Taffy puller for people, I would love to go through it and then I'll be this. But then I realized that whenever I would knock off a check mark of what I thought I needed to be in order to love myself, the list would just keep growing. Yeah. I need to be tall. I need to be small. I need to be smart. I need to be a rocket scientist. It's just never ending. And so self-love isn't a destination. It's the ability to be in the car even if on some days it's a little clunker,
Yeah. So I took some time coming up with notes for today to think about how in the world did I get from the place where I was so just stuck. I didn't believe that I could ever feel any other way about myself other than self-hate to where I'm at now, especially in terms of my body. And so, Gabby, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on when I share these. So one was actually spending time with my body. I did so much in avoidance of it. My behaviors were in avoidance of it. The way I treated myself around other people, the clothing I wore, everything was to avoid. I talk about this a lot with clients, but we're not just a head that happens to move around by some magic with, that's not a body, because I don't have one. It is truly all one thing. So spending time with my body, touching our bodies, and this doesn't have to be weird, but quite honestly, like putting your hand on your arm, holding your hands together, and feeling it touch. It's some somatics, it's some embodiment, feeling what it means to have a finger, temperature, challenging body exposure with safe people. So if I want to change how I hold my posture, because maybe I think I need to be small and I'm challenging that and I want to sit back, be broad, doing that with someone that feels safe. Movement has been helpful for me now that I've established a adaptive relationship with it, because it's so grounding to feel my body in that way. I did a race this past weekend, and as I was like going up this hill, I was like my legs are strong. But again, that's an example of like connecting with my body in a positive manner. And then somatic skills. There's plenty of stuff out like on YouTube, but really if you're able to like find a specialist, there's a book. It's called Practices for Embodied Living. I just looked at it off screen. Practices for Embodied Living. I'm a huge fan of it. That's all about connecting to our bodies, because it's really hard to love something we don't know. And so being able to take time and spend time with ourselves, it was huge for me. And yeah, it's the only thing.
I love that you said it's difficult to love something that we don't know, because I remember talking about this with one of our old colleagues, Morgan. She gave me a really good quote that I used to utilize a lot when I was coaching, and it was, "Your body is an instrument, not an ornament to be perceived." And I was like, holy cow!
Yeah.
What? But I think that's what's so interesting, is our society is so focused on how we can adorn ourselves, or how we can look a certain way. I cannot tell you how many Instagram reels I get now that I'm somebody who has hormonal acne, how many Instagram reels are targeted at me about skincare and how I need to up my skincare routine, or how if I get these earrings, it'll make my face look different. Like all kinds of different MacGyvering that we're trying to do to decorate or adorn our body for the view of other people.
Yeah.
And yet we're not even focused on how we feel about it ourselves. We don't even know what we're capable of or what we can do. And so I love that you talked about, I feel strong today, because I think focusing on what things your body does do and how much it can accomplish can really flip the narrative on its head too.
Absolutely. And I think you push back a lot on diet culture and societal expectations in that way. I've recovered in a larger body. And I have like run into the situation with doctors many times where it's like, we're seeing these variables that tell us that you need to lose weight. Don't we love that statement? Yep. But when we're actually looking at my health is great. I feel strong. I'm treating my body well. This is how I'm made to be, and that is okay. But until I firmly knew that about myself, any other input I received to the contrary, I mean, talk about like targeted. Oh, wow, language. Targeted ads. If a physician said something to me, it wrecked me. And so being able to connect who is it that I actually am, and being able to grasp onto that has been huge in me being assured that I am okay regardless, because I'm doing what I need to do.
I love that you brought up the medical industry as well, and metrics like BMI and things like that just make me want to run for the hills. But I think even as somebody who's been in recovery for quite a long time, I went to the doctor, and on my front sheet that they put on where it gives all of your metrics and things like that, it said overweight in big, black, bold letters. And I remember even that shook me a little bit, and I've been in recovery for a long time. But to just have this label be the identifying factor of what health is to me is the most bananas baffling thing. So I'm really glad that you spoke up about that. I think when we're talking about self-love and difficulties and challenges and really incredible things that come out of it, I think something that could be helpful for us to talk about as Valentine's Day is coming up is how we navigate holidays in recovery and what the ups and downs look like for that. So holidays in recovery are tough and tricky. There's a whole gamut of holidays that we can recognize. We can think like Christmas, Thanksgiving, but we can think of smaller holidays as well, like birthdays, Valentine's Day, which is coming up this week. So I wanted to share a little bit about some of the triggering intersections, what things come up during holidays that we're typically seeing, or at least in my experience, what I felt a lot of. So first one that I came up with was family and friends, or your partner even, who makes comments, whether they're diet-focused comments or fat-phobic comments. I think another thing that ties into that is maybe other people not keeping their eyes on their own food, and making comments about what you plate, or making comments about the different kinds of food that you choose. Curious what your thoughts are with that one, Abby.
Yes, this is something that I struggled with so intensely, and we talked last week a little bit about the roles of food and celebration. And one of the things, there was just so much dread of, gosh, what are other people going to say about what I'm eating, what I look like, having some sort of triggering comment. I do have something that I talked with a client with over the winter holiday season on how to use some satire to navigate these situations. And Gabby, it reminds me of what you said at the beginning of the podcast. And we came up with the idea of making a bingo card, because let's say, and I'm just using random names here, of like, my Uncle Joe always says something about this thing, and it drives me nuts. And no matter how many times I've said something, that's where my brain starts going. But instead, let's put it on a bingo card so that when Uncle Joe says it, I can stamp my thing down and I'm closer to getting 5 in a row and something nice for myself, or a treat for myself, or self-care, or just to be able to say I called it versus, gosh, I can't believe I'm experiencing it again. And so we came up with some diet culture focused ones. Someone's going to bring up whatever diet, whatever weight loss, whatever, but finding a way to make it a little humorous, to go in your head, bingo, like I knew it. Y'all can't trick me. I know how this is gonna go. And I actually have something fun for myself. Oh, I
Uncle
loved
Joe.
it.
Uncle Joe's at it again. Uncle Joe's he's always at it. I think that's also leads into another point that I had tying into this is that I think that sometimes when you go to a holiday celebration and you're early in recovery, maybe your parents told the rest of the family that you're in recovery, or maybe your friends all knew that you went to treatment, or things like that. And I feel it's really easy to become the spotlight of the celebration. Yeah. I'm Gabby, and I am in recovery from an eating disorder, and oh, Gabby, let me cut that for you, or let me, or how's your time in treatment, even around that dinner table. I think it's really easy for people to start asking prying questions without, maybe it's not their intention, maybe it is, but I love the idea of bringing satire to it. I also think it's okay to say, this is not something that I want to talk about. This is not something that I would like to share with you right now. If you want to chat with me one-on-one, we can talk about it. Or even, I just don't want to talk about it, period, point blank. You have the right to not have to share your story with anybody who you don't want to.
This is one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of a cope ahead plan. And it sounds kind of fancy, but it's not. Basically, you identify beforehand potential triggers. Uncle Joe, that same statement, how I want to handle it, and then how I'm going to take care of myself. And having that beforehand, put it on the notes in your phone, do it in a Word document, screenshot it, keep a picture in your phone, share it with somebody else at the event if you're comfortable in doing so. But thinking beforehand about what kind of support you might need and how you want to respond in a way that feels like you can take some power in the situation. I love a cope ahead plan. Yeah, I use them all the time.
And I think it's helpful, too, when you make those cope ahead plans to do things that are realistic to you. I know some people who satire would be the furthest thing that they would be able to access in a time like that. So I think just also making it realistic to who you are. For me, I don't necessarily tag in people, but something that I do for myself when I've been in like holiday parties or family get-togethers where I'm like, oof, this is going to be a rough one, is I allow myself to take breaks. So if I know that I'm getting overstimulated, because I've written my cope ahead plan and I know that X, Y, and Z, if these all happen at once, I'm going to explode. I will, once the first thing happens, I'll be like, excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom for 5 minutes. And people are probably like, man, Gabby must have drank a lot of water today because she's in the bathroom the entire get-together. But really, I'm just in there grounding myself, reminding myself that I expected myself to be overstimulated. I knew that these were potential things that could happen, and I'm going to excuse myself and take time to ground and breathe and regulate so that I can go back and go at it again. I also allow myself to leave things early. So I will always be the first person to leave a party. And I have no hard feelings about it. I am always out because being around a lot of people can sometimes be really taxing on my energy. And so if I get to a point where I'm like, oop, I'm tapped, don't want to talk, I feel like I'm getting a little irritable, I'll just leave. And my friends know that about me. They know that I will excuse myself and leave things early, or I always have to drive my own car to a get-together because I don't want to be at the mercy of having somebody take me home. So those are some of my tips that I've come up with as well.
I think, too, especially for people in early recovery, we have history with holidays. Sort of like food has nostalgia, there's memories attached to it, so do holidays. Some of them great, some of them hard. Being able to recognize beforehand, this has been historically a hard holiday for me. This has been one that, for whatever reason, there has been some challenges come up, and honoring, okay, that might make this feel weird, or I might feel more stressed. And that doesn't mean I'm failing at the interaction or that this day is doomed, but I can be aware that my nervous system is going to be on a little higher alert. So taking time to look at your history with a holiday, factoring that into your cope ahead plan can be a really big help.
I also think, so looking at the past and your historic information is so helpful. I also think looking to the future and the expectations that you have around these different holidays can be helpful. I think for me, I remember when I, saw Christmas or Thanksgiving or any of these holidays depicted in movies, like Hallmark movies, it's everybody gets together and everybody has a fun time and nobody has any problems, or the problems that they do have are like whimsical, like somebody slipped on a banana peel and everybody's laughing because the turkey's on the floor, ha ha ha, like that is not what real life family get-togethers are like for most of us. Families are complex, the relationships are complex, and there's typically drama at these get-togethers. Everybody has a history, everybody has relationships, and if your family doesn't get together very often, it can be everyone's walking on eggshells. And so I think also managing your expectation about what you would like this holiday to look like and what it might actually look like can be helpful too.
Yeah. And I wonder, Gabby, if you have any like thoughts or tips that come specifically around like Valentine's Day is coming out this week or the week of this episode. And there's other expectations that tend to exist for romance or connection or different elements that can feel isolating if you're not in that spot. Do you have any thoughts or like experiences that can just speak to that element of the holiday a little bit?
Absolutely. It goes into my next point that I was going to talk about, which is sometimes like you're alone on the holidays. I think so many holidays are centered around being with other people or being in love and being with your partner or your spouse. Sometimes people do not have the family or the community to celebrate these things with other people, and that can be really isolating. And I think our eating disorders thrive in isolation. They thrive in seeing other people's highlight reels and feeling like we're not matching up to it. I remember like hearing the term FOMO and I was like, oh my gosh, I have that. The fear of missing out. Yeah. So I think something that can be really helpful during those times is one, stay off of social media by all means, like, because what is happening on social media is such a small glimpse into somebody else's life, and for you to be comparing yourself to that small glimpse, it's not realistic, it's not authentic, it's not really what's going on. But two, I think staying busy and making sure that you have things planned out for yourself. So I wrote a little example for myself is birthdays for me are very, very difficult. I have a lot of hardship with birthdays because I think in our society it's depicted as like you have to have like a big blowout bash with the closest 100 friends and somebody's like a private jet, or your friends all came together and they got you an Airbnb in Barcelona and that's what your friends do for you, or you're on a yacht in Thailand, cool, and so for me I always felt so much pressure around my birthdays and they would feel really hard because it never matched up. And so what I ended up doing was every year on my birthday I will go take a trip, so it's in my hands. I have the power and control. This is a holiday one celebrating me and my birth and my existence, and why has it become this weird thing where I reflect on how I'm not enough. So over the past couple years, this year we went to Europe, we've gone to Puerto Rico, we're going to Vegas this upcoming year. So I just try and create my own traditions and celebrations out of these holidays that feel good to me and don't necessarily have to match what society depicts as a good holiday.
No, I love that. And I think the advertising around holidays can be really hard because it's all about Valentine's Day. I am happily single. And yet when I see so many things marketed and I'm like, gosh, I really like that balloon. And there's this video and like next to it in Kroger, and it's like getting it for this special loved one. And I'm like,
wonder if anyone will ever get me anything like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Something that I have started doing, maybe it's been some years, is I buy things for myself because it's reclaiming that same power. Instead of going, oh, that balloon is so cute, I wish someone told me Happy Valentine's Day. I'm like, Happy Valentine's Day, Abby. Here is balloon.
I'll buy this balloon, yeah.
And some flowers. And that's an expression of self-love that I do for myself, but also I don't need to wait for someone else to show that they love me or they want to connect with me for me to be worthy of celebrating in this moment. So
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think a big thing too is like getting comfortable with being by yourself out in public too can be very helpful. So I know a lot of people would like scoff at the idea of going out to eat by yourself or going to the movies by yourself. I love it. I'm in a happily committed relationship. Me and my partner have been dating for over 4 years. And I will be like, hey, it's half price Tuesday at the movie theater, so I'm going to go see this movie, which one, I know you probably won't like because it's a cry fest and I love to cry. But two, I'm going to go get myself ice cream and I'm going to maybe swing by the store and get some cute snacks. I totally full-heartedly agree that you don't have to wait for somebody else to show you the love that you deserve. And you don't have to wait for another person to give things to you. You can give them to yourself.
I know we had chatted about this before, Gabby. Sometimes it can be helpful to connect about a holiday with people that get it. And something that Gabby and I are both proponents of are support groups. And there are some specifically for holidays, and there's some that are general all year round. I know I get really jazzed and excited. I've volunteered for some organizations that do this before, but Gabby, I mean, support groups are huge.
I'm still in a support group to this day, one about being on solid ground in my recovery. So I am a huge proponent of support groups. Every Saturday, I'm in a group chat with a bunch of the folks who are in it, and they're like, hey, Gabby, showing up, which is very nice. And I feel like I built some community around that. But I think a really good resource that I will attach the link to in our video description is the Eating Disorder Foundation, based out of Denver, Colorado. And they have been such a huge resource for me as I've been on my recovery journey. They have specific holiday groups, they have art journaling, they have groups for adolescents 18 and up, groups for LGBT, groups for caregivers. They have mentorship programs. I really enjoyed the holiday specific groups because it would just be a group of us all sitting together talking about how much this sucks when everybody else is talking about how wonderful the holidays are. So I'm a huge proponent of the holiday groups. I do think it can be helpful to be around people who get it.
And as Gabby said, we're going to be linking some resources in our description. And this is not just for people who are navigating eating disorders themselves, but also parents, caregivers, loved ones. There are support groups for you as well, because it can be a new space, unsteady, figuring out what's helpful and what's not. So there's support for you there as well. Be coming up with a resource document that has some general standing support groups, but then including more specialized one, of course. And this release of this episode for Valentine's, we'll intend to do that as we go forward, because it can be helpful to have that community.
What I was just thinking, Abby, is what we might do is we might make a document and then we'll pin it on our Instagram page. So we might make a list of resources in a little post on Instagram, and we'll pin it to our Instagram page. So if you're looking for any of the resources we talk about in the show, it'll be on there and you can find it.
And Gabby, what is our Instagram name? This is a new development for us, folks. We have an Instagram channel.
Yeah, we have an Instagram page that's called @Fireside Snack. Give us a follow. If you like some of the content, give it a share, give it a like, give it a comment. We're doing all kinds of things over there. We also have our Fireside Snack Gmail, where you can send questions or comments about the show. We started off this episode with an audience question. That could be your question next week. So email us. What is the email, Abby?
That will be firesidesnack@gmail.com. So the name of our show, firesidesnack@gmail.com. Folks, we also have something exciting coming up in the next few weeks, and that is an interview. Gabby and I have been very open and honest from the front of the show that while we want this to be about our experience, we don't have all the experience. And there are other spaces, identities that can be spoken to better from others. So we will be having a guest on the show in a couple weeks here. If you feel like you have some expertise in an area or want to throw your hat in the ring to chat with us, please send us an email. Again, firesidesnack@gmail.com. We do have a list of folks, so we can't guarantee a quick get to, but we would love to hear from you and your interests.
We would love to hear from you. And again, thank you so much for supporting our podcast. We really enjoy every week coming and sitting down and having snack with you. So we appreciate you all so much, and we will see you next week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Fireside Snack is hosted by Abby Dinges and Gabby Buckner. Editing, music, and artwork by Gabby Buckner. Please email us at firesidesnack@gmail.com with your recovery questions, and be on the lookout for weekly episodes. Thank you for joining us for Fireside Snack and for filling our cups up with gratitude. Enjoy your week.